Considering how Star Wars prequel movies are usually pretty badly received, did we really need an origin story for Han Solo? So when I first walked in to see this movie, I had absolutely no idea what to expect. I hadn't seen any previous reviews, and while the initial trailer didn't look so good, the later ones weren't bad. You could say that I was cautiously optimistic walking in, especially considering I'm a pretty big fan of both Donald Glover and Woody Harrelson. Now, Solo, a Star Wars story, is a film with a few strengths, but many flaws. Now, sometimes the strengths can outweigh any flaw or weakness a film may have, but I'm sorry to say that is not the case this time. Solo is a jumbled film, sometimes good, hell, even great, but yet most of the time it's simply mediocre, if not outright bad. Let's start with the plot. The synopsis is simple enough. The movie is giving us a look at Han Solo before he was a galaxy-wide renowned smuggler. It picks up with a much younger Han than we're used to, as he's living in the streets of a slum planet, and then the plot proceeds to move forwards as he travels around. Now, the problem with the writing of the movie is that it never really knows what it's trying to be. It'll be a heist movie for a while, which I was fully on board with. Then it pivots to a straight action film, back to heist, to mystery, to heist, back to action, back to whatever. And this whole time it's trying to keep a heartfelt undertone throughout. It's not surprising to say that it fails miserably at this process. The movie tries to focus on way too many things and ends up not focusing enough on any one of it. You're left with bits and pieces of what could have been a great plot, but ultimately it's a frustrating jumble that very rarely succeeds. Of course, what doesn't help at all is that the vast majority of the film is predictable. The film is the sheer opposite of subtle, which is a disaster considering that they clearly wanted you to be surprised and shocked multiple times throughout. Another thing that disappointed me in the film was the acting. I've said it before, I'm a big fan of Donald Glover and Woody Harrelson, but neither of them performed particularly well. Donald Glover, barring one or two scenes, was never really believable as a young Lando Calrissian. The biggest disappointment, though, was Woody Harrelson. Throughout almost the entire film, it felt like he simply didn't care. His performance was, well, wooden. I know he can act better. I've seen it, but he didn't bring his A game or, hell, even his B game to this movie. Emilia Clarke was neither bad nor particularly good, though she did have good chemistry with the cast. Now, the actor I was left most conflicted with was Aldrin Ehrenreich, playing Han Solo. For many of his scenes, it was difficult to place him as a younger Han, though I mostly blame this on the writing. Yet at the same time, after I mentally equated him to a Han who was simply naive to the horrors of man, I enjoyed his performance much more. He was clearly trying his hardest, and while it didn't always work, there were more than a few scenes where he shined. I feel a quick mention of the robot L3 is needed. She was the comedic relief of the movie, as robots often are in Star Wars, and the entire character was another example of wasted potential. There were a few scenes with her that made my entire theater laugh, but by the end of the film, you honestly completely forget she even existed. Now, many of my issues with this film, other than the writing, I blame almost entirely on Ron Howard, the director. There were times where I could actually feel the complete lack of direction for the characters, which I've only rarely ever seen before. I also have to wonder who thought making an origin story for Han Solo was a good idea. His character already has an origin story and a conclusion in the original trilogy. I mean, it's a Star Wars film, so it's probably going to make money, but still not a good idea. Now, as a Star Wars film, I feel obliged to mention the musical score of the movie. Unlike almost everything else about the film, it fails to live up to its potential. Other than one widely known Star Wars track, the rest of the score was completely and utterly forgettable. Now, even with all the faults I had with the movie, it's clear that it can still be enjoyed by many. If you're a fan of chase scenes, for example, this movie has them in galore, and the CGI at the very least was competently done, if not great at times.
Now this is pod racing.
One scene in particular was a treat to watch, and I wish more Star Wars films had similar scenes that help expand the universe. Now, at the end of the day, if you're a Star Wars fan and you simply want to watch more high-budget Star Wars CGI action, while also ignoring plot and acting, then this movie may be worth watching for you. On the other hand, if you're a big fan of the original portrayal of Han Solo and Lando Calrissian, or just a fan of competently made films, I would avoid this film. If I had to give it a score, I'd rate the film a 6.3 out of 10. Thanks for watching my review, guys. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns, and as always, please like, comment, and subscribe.